Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today on the Shade Report, we're going to go over why you'll never fit in with Koreans unless you're willing to do this particular thing that may be really difficult to do. Second, does J-Hope have any hope of going solo? And third, how to teach your man to use BB cream in the summer, because I know a lot of people on this channel are females and you probably want to convince your better half to try to put on the BB cream. But there's a special technique. And if you didn't see the secret beauty technique video, we're just going to recap it real quick here today. Alright, so you've probably heard the stereotype that Korean people are stubborn, especially when they fight. And why is that? Where does that come from? Are they just a stubborn crusader who just believe in their own way and that's it? That is such a superficial way of thinking about it, and you'll never get anywhere with it because you don't know what the source is. And the source is actually quite simple when you actually take away the complexity. Now, the reason why I believe we get into these sorts of conflicts. So if you're gonna like Korea, you're gonna spend a lot of time with Korean culture and befriend Korean people and maybe even come to Korea to visit or live for a while. You'll have some fun, but eventually, like in any kind of people conflict, you're gonna get into some people conflicts and you're gonna be like, whoa, blindsided sometimes by a very, what you would probably think is an odd reaction and a very severe reaction by Korean people that comes from this place where it's been bottled up and it explodes at you. And it's more than just that issue that you were just talking about. It's like more than one. Now, at the core of it, it is, I think, I don't like when we're always trying to like blame culture, like, oh, it's Korean culture because of this. But here where I do think there's the Korean culture element is that there is a social value or mechanism for not wanting to speak up when you're supposed to, or like when issues are little, like, let's say, like, if it's like you have like a small health problem, instead of dealing with it right away, you just kind of ignore it and then suddenly you're in the emergency room. And so in Korea, there is not a lot of incentive to speak up because only bad things happen when you speak up. Case in point, now that Miss Corona she's kind of having a resurgence, but we're pretending that she's not. And people are going more back to the office. There's been more cases of, yes, bullying. And a lot of people are saying that 30% have had experience of workplace harassment this year, and most of them don't say anything about it because they think that there's nothing good that can happen or there's retaliation. And I just wanted to also, look at this clip in its full glory. And so as you can see, like, there is not a lot of kind of help that comes along. Yes, actually, there was this media report that condemns it. So society does not like this. Korean people do not like bullying, but at the same time, it is really hard for there to be traction against it. So what I'm saying is, like, that same person is a total victim in that scenario. Also, the people around them are victims because they're being taught that this is the norm. They're now being taught, this is where I think the cultural element comes in, because there is not an incentive to speak up, because you speak up, you get slapped. If you don't, so the safe route is to not speak up, and it's to just sort of just kind of, handle it internally. But this extends to your friends and family. And when somebody in your friends and family piss you off and you don't say anything, In that kind of situation, it's a little bit different because they're not like kind of like a, a powerful boss. You start to get mad, you start to get resentful, and it starts building up. You actually are having a conversation with that person in your mind, and you keep having that conversation over and over and over again, but you don't have the courage to speak up about it. And then one of these days, it blows up, and that person is blindsided because all this time you pretended that it was okay. Now, this is where I think it becomes a problem that needs to be addressed, and I don't think Korean people kind of see it this way. What I see is that actually you, as the person who held it inside, have tricked me into thinking that you were okay with our way of doing things, or how, like, your perception of the world, like your thoughts, like you were pretending. And so now, like, basically the response, this is how I would respond to that. If I was being a little bit sassy towards them, I'd be like, oh, is that how you feel? Well, basically, I've been holding inside 10 things that I think are wrong about you, but I did not say anything. So shall we go over them so that you can become a better person now and just, be more considerate? And just say like, just kidding, I don't, because I've been sharing my thoughts and feelings and discomforts and, things with you along the way. You know who I am. Suddenly, I don't know who you are. And so that's kind of like a scary feeling sometimes, like when you're in Korea, like when that kind of thing happens, suddenly you're just like, then who are you? Like, I don't know actually what you like or don't like. Wow. Because so I would say, okay, there's 3 buckets. 1, yes, maybe there's some things that like universally like you did wrong, and that's like, anybody can look at that situation and that's wrong. You should apologize for that. Secondly, it could be a little bit kind of a middle ground, like, in some cases it's not so good, in other cases it's whatever. And then the other case, which is the thing that pisses me off the most, is like it's their personal preference, it's their peculiarity, it's their way of kind of interpreting, or their trigger, or their way of like attaching meaning to some certain behavior. And that is, I think, why a lot of Korean people are very mentally tired, because this third bucket of like anything can set a Korean person off, and everybody is trying to make sure they're not going to trigger that. And so that's why everybody is careful. That's why people aren't speaking up. This like, stereotype of Asian people, they don't speak up, or they're just like, not trying to offend anybody. It's because they don't want to get slapped. It is not because of like this so group dynamic. They think of, please, it's the most selfish thing for them to do, because they're looking out for them to not get slapped. And are they looking out for the group? No, they're looking at the greatest bully in the situation and pandering to them. Does group dynamics and group harmony and common good also operate? Yes. And I would say like it operated a lot more in the kind of older days where you were stuck more in the same location, and you would see a little bit more of return on your, investment of time and energy of being like a good, like, working towards the common good. But definitely in this like whole new modern era, people are taking advantage of these old social hierarchies and the power just automatically given to like age and class, and abusing people, lower than them. And so it looks somewhat the same though, and that is the problem. And so if you come to Korea or interact with Korean people and sometimes are confused, but like, oh my God, where did that come from? I know. I think a lot of people, I've heard this a lot of people even in the United States, like if you have, if you're not Korean, or even if you are Korean and you have a Korean friend or a Korean partner and you're just like, whoa, where did that explosion come from? Usually because for whether it was conscious or not, they have been holding things in. And on the one hand, where I don't want to blame them, in the example of there's nothing good about speaking up, that's where it comes from, where it's blameless. But then where it starts to cross over, where I think they should shoulder some responsibility, is then that creates a false depiction of who you are as a person, what you like or dislike. And I think the onus is also on that person to know, like, when they are crossing that threshold and be like, okay, so maybe in a scary situation where I might get slapped, I will just, be quiet. But in like my, everyday personal life, I should not do those things and then let it build up and then explode at my friends and family, when actually you should have exploded at the person that was slapping you. In all honesty, slap them back. I would slap that other one back, and who cares? Who cares? If they slapped you first, slap them back. I mean, how refreshing would that be? Don't slap your friends and family. Come on. That, I think, is something, though, that you have to understand, is that what I just said is not what you're supposed to do according to the laws of Korea. And if you want to fit in here, you don't slap the person that slaps you. And then eventually you let it just boil up and you slap your friends and family. Now, are you willing to basically live under that kind of a condition? If so, you can totally be Korean. If not, you may have a hard time really accepting the way that the culture moves, because it's not even just those one or two extreme incidents. It's all the little ways of interacting with the modes of deference to maintain that equilibrium that makes it so tiring. Okay, let's move on to J-Hope. Oh, did you watch that video? That was so interesting. It was not what I expected at all, even though I know that they have, like, the flower boy and then the hard edge kind of back and forth in their motif. He went really kind of hard, and I did not know, but somebody actually put up this really cool side-by-side comparison of J-Hope's video and also Fight Club. So I think there was definitely an homage to Fight Club. And from what I gathered from J-Hope's video, it was more about like rebellion and trying to fight against, the system for freedom. And, Fight Club was about like anti-consumerism, like not wanting the rewards of the world and to be sucked into that system. And of course, that is definitely where they are at right now. Also, the sound. That sound was very interesting, because to me, it seems like it's kind of like my generation. And the first drum beats, I heard Fiona Apple. And then I was like, oh, this is totally like 90s grunge. And so now I understand like why he's on the headline of Lollapalooza, because I think Lollapalooza started with that whole grunge pop thing, like, back when I was like in junior high or high school. And this song definitely fits in with that whole genre. And so I think that's kind of cool how he is going way off genre and, from like the BTS genre. And I think when he is now going solo, when all of the BTS members have to go solo, they're going to have to get out of their individual roles. And now they have to cover at least 2 or 3 roles, like to basically fill the space. And so I think that is a very smart move to try to expand. Now, do you want them to kind of like, pick a genre and then kind of go into it? Like, is J-Hope now just going to do like kind of grunge pop? Or would you rather them do like a buffet? I would rather have them do like a buffet, because then like, just in case some of the fans don't like him doing grunge pop, he can try to do something else, and the excuse is just experimentation. Same for all of the other guys. But it was very interesting because I looked up who he collaborated with and who was on the credits for writing and producing this song, and J-Hope is on all of the credits for writing and producing, which I think was great. Big Hit is on the copyright and also the phonographic copyright, and they worked with brass tracks with a guy named Ivan Jackson, and he's kind of like this young producer that's worked with like Harry Styles, and they also did work on Disease by BTS on one of their songs before, so it's not like the first time that they've collaborated. And they work with, I believe, Columbia Records. And so I think it's very interesting that they were able to collaborate with somebody, and get this new sound, but new sound that seems like very genre appropriate. So good luck to J-Hope over at Lollapalooza. I think you're gonna do a great job performing. I had no idea that kind of performance would come out. I think it's good. I'm excited. Okay, so it's summertime and you're trying to get your SPF and you want to do the K-beauty thing, and especially if you're a guy, maybe you're confused about how to do it and how to, get the color on, and maybe basically what happens if you're sunburned and you want to kind of even out your complexion and you don't really know how to use BB cream. Now, the thing with BB cream, unless you're using it almost as like a concealer, I don't think you should ever use it on its own. I think it should always be mixed with a sunblock, and that is the secret of it. And I think that's why people, they're always like, oh, I don't like BB cream. That's because I don't think most people aren't using it correctly. So again, this is my favorite men's BB cream. It's MDOC, and I'll leave a link below. Just takes a little bit, just like, a dot. And what I like to do is go down the nose bridge because it's instant highlighting. Also here under the eyes. And then you have some amount remaining. You take another dot of like sunblock and you mix it in. And then you blend it. Now, there is a white... I already had BB cream on. And actually already had like some... I put on a little bit of foundation for you guys. So I don't know how this is going to look with like now another layer. But if you're worried about like white casting or something like that, like it literally kind of like evaporates or goes somewhere. Like it disappears. So then you basically get like this very natural tone. Is it natural? Yeah. It looks pretty natural. You get this natural tone that is actually not your natural skin color. So there you go. And you get double SPF protection. Sometimes you don't add enough because you're just like, oh, it's like too greasy. And then this has SPF and this has SPF. So that's just your K-beauty tip of the day. Try it, guys. And if you're a girl, try to get a guy to try it. It'll change their life. Suddenly people are going to be like, oh, how did I live without it? All right. Well, what do you guys think about the shade report today? Comment below and remember to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.